We,
No, wait a minute, this is
yeah,
2008, we were talking to them.
we're,
There you go, Dickie Doo. Pass that down.
It's a negotiation, they're gonna move forward, see all the contractors.
4:30, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
well, all of
What do you-
them, assuming we
Wasn't this,
assuming
aren't we doing 508?
the sergeants.
Yeah.
What do you think about your question?
Where's my mallet?
What was the clerk for that one?
I'm trying to demonstrate.
Was it Linda?
I'd like no.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will start the special Board of Commissioners meeting. It is a little 4:30. Today is Wednesday, May 18th. And this meeting is primarily to discuss the 2011 budget shortfall and how we're going to compensate for that. So the meeting will start. We'll have a, before we start, I want to make just a couple announcements. If you have a cell phone, if you can put that on vibrate or silent, we would appreciate that. And County Commissioner Henshaw has called ahead. He is on his way into town, and will be doing, he might be a few minutes late, as well as Commissioner Wheelock is on his way, and will be coming in a few minutes late as well. So with that, we would have a roll call vote, or roll call attendance, please.
Commissioner Fleece.
Present.
Baxbauer.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Lemko.
Here.
Gilman.
Here.
Chairman Inman.
Here. Okay, we have quorum. And Chairman's, I guess, suggestion, since it's not on the agenda, we can stand for the pledge if we could. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next item is public comment. This is the time in our agenda. If you wish to make any remarks to the county commission, if you can keep them within 3 minutes or so, that would be helpful to us. Does any member of the public wish to speak at this time? Hearing none, we will close public comment. There will be another time at the end of the agenda for public comment. We will now move on to discussion 2011 budget. I'll just do a couple opening remarks. As you recall, the Board of Commissioners did approve a ad hoc committee at its previous board meeting to come up with suggestions regarding how to manage the 2011 projected shortfall of $712,000. They did approve a ad hoc committee of myself, Commissioner Fleece, Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Wheelock, along with staff, County Administrator Dennis Aloya and our Finance Director Dean Bott, to meet. We had scheduled meetings on May 4th as well as May 11th. You have the draft minutes on your desk. One was in your packet, and the other one we laid on your desk today. I guess as a suggestion, we can just approve those minutes at our Board of Commissioners meeting next week. And at those meetings, we discussed some possible parameters to look at the 2011 budget shortfall, and county administration and our finance director, with some discussion with the finance committee, laid out some recommendations as to potential ways to deal with the budget. And what I guess at this time I would like to, if Dean, if you would like to have an opportunity to speak at this time regarding these 5 line items and how you see that working within the 2011 budget, I would allow you to have the floor at this time.
Well, we did make a few changes to this document from the last ad hoc committee, but going through the list fairly quickly, the first item is the $300,000 reduction that results from freezing our amortization of our defined benefit retirement contribution. The second item are reductions in our general fund appropriation to the health department. This was changes that were volunteered by the health department. Fred and his staff were aware of the budget issue, and they looked at some of the things that they were doing and came up with these, the items listed here, the lead-based paint testing, discontinuing a Wise Woman program, and then there was some increased funding from the WIC program that they were taking into consideration, and that is based on the savings from those three items for the last half of 2011. The next item, the $200,000 amount, we're currently in discussions with the unions regarding concessions concerning the personal days that are paid out at the end of the year if they're not used over the course of the year. The fourth item is the appropriation to the Economic Development Corporation, making that from the Economic Development Fund rather than the general fund. And then the balance of the $712,000 would be made up primarily from unexpended personnel expenditures within the entire county general fund. And this is a function of the fact that we budget the FTEs, all of our positions, at 100% of cost and benefits. And over the course of our fiscal year, which is the calendar year, due to vacant positions, the time that it takes to fill positions, and just overall changes if employees move within or around within the county, there are, historically, we do not expend 100% of that budget. Those items total $712,000. One of the items that we pulled out was the reduction that we were proposing for the appropriation to the Parks and Recreation Department. That is the change, if you recall, what was presented at the last ad hoc committee meeting. With that reduction, we increased the bottom line figure, the unexpended personnel number, to make up that difference. That's a real quick overview. Welcome any questions or additional.
Let me make some remarks, and then I'll ask any of the committee members if they'd like to speak, and then open it up to the rest of the board. I think the feeling of the ad hoc committee was that, we were prepared to make some difficult decisions by setting up this budget ad hoc committee for the 2011 budget that would really lead us into the 2012 budget, where we really know that we have a substantial shortfall coming our way. And I think I can only speak for myself that with the staff identifying the issues that you have on your desk and areas on your desk that would provide us that amount of money in terms of adjustments within our budget, that allowed us to make some easier decisions for the 2011 budget. But we were really well aware that as we move into next month, as budget packets are being sent out to all the departments, we would have a much more difficult task ahead of us for the 2012 budget, where we know we have $625,000 or $650,000 of our fund balance that helped us in 2011, along with some other expected shortfalls in either state funding or federal funding, and lower assessed values that could occur at tax tribunals and board of reviews. So the main goal of this ad hoc committee was to address the shortfall in 2011. I think we felt that staff did a good job in evaluating the overall budget as compared to actually how we were doing, and came up with a differential. And we don't want to discount the fact that that we know that we have to make more serious decisions and more difficult decisions as we from now till next October to adjust the 2012 budget. So would any other committee member, Commissioner Fleece, Richardson, or Wheelock, wish to speak with regarding this recommendation at this time? Commissioner Fleece.
After our last meeting the other day, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and we'd asked that staff remove the Parks and Rec reduction. And like I said, I've had some time to think about this, and what I'd like to see added back into this is a line item that would ask all departments to voluntarily check their budgets and see what they could come up with, like the health department did, for example. Another thing, and I'd like to ask Dean, on the personal days, are you figuring that roughly $100,000 per day?
That is correct. It does equate to approximately $100,000 per day of personal day payout.
I think what I'd like to see changed in this draft of proposed reductions is to go from 8 to 5. So we'd be asking the unions and non-union personnel for 3 days. And I think that would certainly help the deficit position we're going to be in for not only for 2011, but heading into 2012.
All right, Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I guess my comments are, I appreciate all the work Dean and Dennis did in this in the short term. We basically had about 3 weeks to try to identify $712,000. I believe Commissioner Fleece is correct. I think we should ask every department in the county to identify any possible places where they can cut within their department, and let's do those cuts as quickly as possible, because the ramifications of not doing so are going to be very significant layoffs and program cuts as of January 1st of 2012. This probably isn't the perfect way we would have all liked to seen it happen. We probably would have liked to try identify some of those cuts right now, but the fact is, in the short time frame, we were better off to identify revenues and stuff that was easy to get to. I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit or anything like that, but something that was very quick and easy that we could identify so as that we were sure that we were stable for the 2011 budget, and then ask all of the departments to look deeper into their departments. As we as commissioners look through the 2012 budget, I'm sure the commitment is that we will look at every program in every department, how much it costs and how many people it serves. And we will make significant program cuts if we have to get the budget in balance. But that can't be done in a 2-week period that we had to get this done. So we've identified revenue to replace it, and I'm supporting the proposal that has brought forth by the finance director and the administrator for the $712,000 in additional identified revenue and the cuts to the health department. I appreciate Fred's coming up right up front and say, we don't need to do this. There are other organizations and other programs out there that are providing these services. But I do believe that we will be looking at all of our departments to make significant cuts before January of 2012.
Commissioner Richardson, do you have any remarks?
Well, I think what we brought back from the ad hoc committee is useful. I think I may be the one person in the minority who doesn't think that we're in as bad a shape as, you might get the idea reading the newspaper or whatever. But it's certainly not a bad idea to, find some savings if we can. I do question the $100,000 per day saved by, reducing the number of days that, we buy back at the end of the year. Actually, that number is going to go down as you reduce it, because people do use some of them. They may not use all 8, but they certainly use some. So the third day, it may be $100,000 a day for the first 2. The third day may not pay that great a return in comparison with the first 2. But anything we can do is useful. Now, I would point out that a point I made in the ad hoc was that although we we programmed spending $625,000 of the general fund balance this year. We started the year $200,000 better than that. So, I mean, already that's almost a third of the money that we, that we don't need, that we're not spending that we thought we were. So for this and other reasons, I think we were fairly conservative on the budget we passed last year, and it's, things are, we have to keep track of it as we go through the year.
Okay. Well, that's the report from the ad hoc committee and the ad hoc committee individual comments. Now we'll open it up to the rest of the board for comments and discussion. Commissioner Gilman.
We're looking at a significant enough shortfall next year that I think the 712 that we're trying to meet this year, or the 700,000 roughly that we're trying to meet this year, just to meet this year's budgets, I think we need to look at it a little harder. The MERS money savings, well, that's kind of a dance, because next year we may have to bump that up or not, but I mean, I still have, in my head, I'm trying to work that 300,000, how that we actually have that to put towards this.
I can answer that real quickly for you. When we did the budget, we were under the understanding that MERS was going to continue to accelerate our amortization on our unfunded balance.
So it's money accounted for, but we didn't use.
So we were going to be, previous years was 18,
All right.
16, and then 14, so we budgeted for 14%.
Right.
And they actually made the decision after we made the budget to freeze Grand Traverse County for 3 years at 16%.
Okay. The other thing looking at was the amount that you were going to put on the Parks Department was about 35,000?
Right, something
Something like that, okay.
yeah.
That would have at least begun, I mean, I think we should relook at that and add that back in, because I think they need to relook at manning and staffing and get us, again, set up for 2012 so that we're not having the same fight again. And I think if we start with that, that makes them look at the next year, assuming that that's gone, and they can long-term plan for that hit, because next year it's going to come, or it's going to come this year.
Right. Either way. Okay, Commissioner Henschel.
Did the ad hoc committee vote on a particular recommendation, or is it just basically informational of what we've heard so far?
It was a consensus of the ad hoc committee that
Okay.
this would be the recommendation if you choose to accept it.
Okay. But I'll say, I really want to thank the ad hoc committee members for taking the extra time out of their week, and this is a really difficult subject to look at. I don't think it's enough, and I've got to, for once, agree with Commissioner Richardson. The $200,000 concession of employees giving up the option to cash in a couple of those days, it's just human nature. There's often a big failure of government bodies to look at human nature, and if they can't cash those in, they're going to use them. So I guess my concern is there's going to be a lack of, there's going to be a little bit less service to the public, and I guess it's something to think about.
Yeah. So I think if we all understand that you have 8 personal days, and if you take all 8, you get paid for 6. That's how this thing works.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's the premise behind the thing. Is that you know,
Okay,
way back, what we used to do is have sick time and personal time. And we
Okay.
said, let's just give everybody 8 days paid. So what we're saying here is that you still get your 8 days off, but we're only going to pay you for 6.
Oh, okay. I was under the impression
Yes.
that this was only, you
Yes.
couldn't cash them in, but you could
No.
use them. Okay.
Yeah, so that was the premise, is that you can use up to your 8 days, but you only.
Is that how you understood it, Ross?
The way this works is you get 8 personal days, I mean, not us. Employees get 8 personal days a
Yes.
year, and if they don't use them, they can cash them all in at the end of the year. And what this does is it says you still get 8 days, but the maximum number you can cash in is 6. So what, was it Sonny? No, Larry, I'm sorry. What Larry proposed is you can only cash in 5. I mean, the whole point of this is to get people to take the days so we don't have to pay for them at the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay. year and a half ago, the original proposal by the administration was 2 furlough days. Okay, this is basically furlough days from another approach,
Right.
from a different direction. But basically, they're 2 furlough days. We're saying, take the 2 days, you'll still get your same pay, but you're not going to get the extra pay at the end of the year if you don't take them.
So it's basically an employee concession.
Okay.
But we should note that has to be negotiated with
Yeah,
all of the unions.
All the unions.
So that's going to take a little bit of time.
What do we do, just to throw the question out
Yes,
there? What do
please
we do if
ask.
they say no? Are we going to come back to the board and say, okay, we got to cut some positions then?
Come back and offer
We might have to.
Okay.
Well, that's where the extra $200,000 at the start of the year in the fund balance basically compensates for the $200,000 we may not get back from the unions.
Yeah. Dean?
Just as a point of clarification, the personal days are budgeted in all of the budgets, and the bulk of that is in the general fund, but that block of time, those days, are budgeted in addition to the employees' wages and salaries. So if they use the personal days over the course of the year, in effect, if everyone used all of their personal days, you'd have the amount that you budget for personal leave. It's a separate line item that would be a savings in the budget if they took all of their time off. You don't have that savings for the employees that actually have a cash out. But we budget both their their hours and their salary and the personal days. So you have a budget savings if the days are used, and you have a use of some of the personal days that are budgeted if we pay the payment in December. And historically, there's no pattern. I can't tell you that 50% of those days that are budgeted are, returned as part of the fund balance, but they're not all used. But because we double budget that, there is the potential for a budget savings.
Commissioner Lempo?
Yeah, when I look at this, I'm very concerned about one of the items, and that's the EDC, or Economic Development Corporation. One of the concerns we have, and of course Tino's here, and I appreciate that, one of the concerns I have is that we need to create jobs in order to get our budgets up and get our taxes up to where they need to be. And if we start to continue to cut economic development funding, we're going to be losing out on that. And I understand this is a shift from that. But my focus would be is I don't think we pay enough for the benefits that we receive from that organization, that we should be paying more. We should pay the $20,000 on top of the $40,000 coming out of their fund. Because if we're going to create jobs, that's the way to do it. We got to get them out there. We got to get them in front of the organizations and helping them to be successful. Had a great conversation with a gentleman today. He's leaving Traverse City because he can't make it, because people that he was working with took all their money out of their funds and tried to save their businesses and failed. This is not a way to go.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to make a comment is that I think that what we're doing here isn't hard enough. We're not working at this hard enough. Because what it is, it reminds me of the state of Michigan for the last 8 years trying to play funny money with shifting money here and shifting money there. We have not done a good job at looking at the overall budget of our county and determining what do we not need to give for services. I think we need to look at that and look at the culture within our organization. I think it makes a difference as to how much we're going to cut. I have to agree with Larry that, you look at all the departments and say, look, we need to culturally look at what we are going to do differently for our community. That's the piece of it. One of the things that I had brought up, and I've still not gotten a thing, was how do we save money on postage? There's a way of doing it, but I've not gotten the feedback back to figure out how do we do it. I understand there's a challenge with it, but we need to have that discussion. I understood that was like a $7,000 a month savings. I mean, that's huge when you start looking at savings. And so even in our administration, we need to look at all the way up and down the line of the county, including us as commissioners' budgets. because we have to look at where we're going to go, not this year, not next year, but the year after that and the year after that.
Yeah, and just a remark, Herb, that we're fully aware of your feelings and other commissioners' feelings on starting early on making those structural changes and prioritizing our budget and starting that process immediately after we conclude our adjustments on the 2011 budget. So, you know, the ad hoc committee felt once we identified these areas that we need to make, you know, we can make those adjustments now anyways, that starting next month when the budget packets go out, we can start working with our departments in terms of shaving down and prioritization and getting that whole thing done by October. So those things are going to happen. They're just going to happen. They're going to start with the 1st of June.
But I'm not so sure that we shouldn't even be looking in future contracts that we're going to be looking with for union contracts as a wage freeze. You know, I think that, you know, I've talked to a lot of people in our community, and they're not getting wage increases.
No.
Absolutely not getting them. And so we need to start looking at how do we set the example here to determine whether or not we're going to continue to give 2 or 3% increases in wages.
That's a fair comment. Commissioner Richardson, you want to respond to the
Yeah, I want to
EDC?
respond to, I want to respond to the EDC comment. Before that, none of the contracts over the next couple of years give anybody 2 or 3% wage increases, Herb. I think the biggest is 1 3/4, but we also got a give back on them having to pay part of their health insurance premium. So for some of the lower wage employees, they got no increase at all, in some cases a decrease in pay. But on the EDC money, this is a contract with the Traverse City EDC, which is, you know, Tino Bright Up's unit. We're not changing the amount of money we're giving to Tino, okay? It's $40,000. It has been coming $20,000 out of the EDC fund and $20,000 out of the general fund, and all I'm trying to do is move that $20,000 from the general fund being paid out of the EDC fund, because there are funds available to do that. They've got $150,000 in there right now that they can use for administration, and I would just like to pay the money out of there to take the pressure off of the general fund.
Just one other item I want to bring up to Commissioner Gilman's comment about perhaps beginning now on some things that we're aware of in terms of departments and some cutbacks. Commissioner Max Bauer made a couple excellent points with regard to downtime at the pool, and, you know, do we need to be fully staffed during those times, and, you know, the type of savings that we could be getting into without really affecting you know, the programs we have in place, which is an excellent idea. And so that's why it was originally on the sheet, and I think Commissioner Wheelock made a point, you know, that, you know, is it right to have direct one department without directing other departments to do the same thing? Is, I think, pretty much his thought process during the ad hoc committee. So, and I have to agree with you, Commissioner Gilman. It's you either do it in May or we start making those decisions in June and move forward with the 2012 budget. So, and we knew that this kind of discussion would occur here at this meeting. So, I mean, it is a good point. Commissioner Henschel.
Thanks. Just one last comment. I'm actually reading the packet on my iPhone today because my computer broke. Looking these over, you guys have done a great job, and it's a great start. I just want to be clear that this is only a start.
Correct.
That as we move forward, we've got a lot more work to do.
I agree. Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I think the ad hoc committee absolutely agrees that there is some significant cuts will be made to the Grand Traverse County budget going into 2012. You know, at least from my perspective, I did not feel it was fair. The original draft proposal that came to us identified $35,000 to be cut from Parks and Recreation. I'm not going to say that $35,000 should be cut or it shouldn't be cut, but what I am going to say is I don't believe it was fair to direct Parks and Recreation to make an immediate cut of $35,000 from their budget when I didn't direct any other departments to make cuts to their budget other than voluntary money that the health department had brought to us. You know, if I'm going to mandate to departments that you must cut money from your 2011 budget, I need to look at more than just one department.
Commissioner Richardson.
And building on your comments, Sonny, the general fund appropriation of Parks and Rec is about $270,000 this year. So that $35,000 cut represents somewhere around 13 to 14% cut of the general fund appropriation of Parks and Rec. Now, if we want to ask every department to take out 13 to 14% of the money that we appropriate them, I'm guessing we probably wouldn't have any budgetary problems whatsoever. So I think we need to be fair in how we deliver these cuts.
Okay. Commissioner Gilman.
To that end, does in actuality, I think going forward, it's a little over $300,000. To that end, does that $300,000 represent the entire operating budget that they have? In other words, does that include just our contribution, or does that include our contribution plus what they receive in revenues? So it's not quite 13% if you look at it in the big picture and the money that's actually spent.
I said 13% of the general fund appropriation is what I said.
Of the appropriation,
Okay.
not of their operating budget.
Not of their operating budget.
So do we have a recommendation, or Commissioner Maxwell, would you like to speak?
Please. Dean, the $300,000 MERS, I understand they froze our payment for 3 years. That $300,000 is still owed, is it not?
Well, with MERS, we have a long-term relationship. Every year, they do an actuarial valuation to determine, the value of the assets that are in the retirement system that are Grand Traverse County assets, and they look at how that liability for those, not only the benefits that we're currently paying, but will pay out for years into the future. It's something that changes annually because of a number of things. The markets, those funds are invested. Market performance right now has been fairly good. I have not received our actuarial valuation dated December 31st of 2010. There's always a chance that our unfunded liability there has improved since it did when they had given us our contributions. So that's why they look at that every year. I can't say that our position has improved or worsened in that retirement system because they do look at it annually. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, okay, they've frozen our payment for 2010, 11, and 12.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, 2011, 12, and 13.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 2011, 12, 13. What I'm asking is, and I guess it's your best guess, in 2014, when the MERS payment comes due, are we going to have to kick in this $300,000 that that we don't have to pay this year?
There's always the possibility that they would, at that point in time, pick us up or put us back on the accelerated funding plan that we're currently on. They've just given us a 3-year, I guess, abeyance or a freeze.
Have they given any other county that you know of?
No, this was the only county.
We're it.
We are it.
Okay. The next question I have, Dean, is approximately what did we spend out of fund balance last year?
Well, we started the year, this is memory, but
Yes.
the initial budget, the budgeted use was $950,000. We added $45,000 to that early on to cover an appropriation to Civic Center South, and then a $20,000 appropriation for the 211 funding. Later in the year, September, the county treasurer asked us to look at calling a bond issue to pay that bond issue off early to realize the interest savings. That required an additional $300,000 use. I think if you add those numbers up, our budgeted use of fund balance was right around $1.3 million. We ended the year don't hold me to the
I
number
won't,
exact,
I
but I think it
won't.
was $1,090,000, so about $200,000 better than our budgeted use. But it's important to remember that we put an extra $300,000 in to make that payment, the call payment on that bond issue.
Okay, so without the bond payment, we've spent approximately $800,000 out of fund balance last year.
Correct.
Okay.
Without the bond payment.
Then, partway through the year, the CPI did not do us any favors, and we had an additional revenue shortfall, did we not?
Well, for 2010?
Yeah.
Our tax revenues were down in 2010 because of, the continued reduction in taxable value because of real estate values.
But we came up about $750,000 shy from our revenue projections, didn't we?
For 2010, primarily in tax revenues, yes.
Okay. So we were about $1.5 million in the hole last year.
No.
Well, what we had done, Commissioner Maxbauer, during the year was we made budget amendments to cover that shortfall, similar to what we're doing
Okay.
now.
Okay. The next question I have,
I'm sorry, can I dispel a piece of information that's just been left hanging out there? $800,000, not counting the bond payment, is how much of our fund balance we used, with the reduction in tax revenue. Okay? That was all figured in. It wasn't 800,000 plus 700,000. It was 800,000.
I got that from Dean, but thank you.
Well, no, because you left it out there, and, anybody watching was probably going to wonder what's going on here.
The other comment that I have, just for the board, is I do think we need to identify cuts now, sooner rather than later. And thank you, Fred, for yours. That's it.
All right, Commissioner Richardson?
No, never mind.
Yes? Did you
No,
want to speak?
I started, no, I decided I wasn't going to make that
All right,
comment.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Fleet.
I'd like to make a motion that reference the reductions to the 2011 budget be as illustrated in our draft document put together by staff, which MERS would be to $300,000, Health Department $28,888. The union, non-union concessions, I would like to increase that to 300,000 and 8 to 5 instead of 8 to 6. The EDC, the 20,000 there, and the anticipated unexpended personnel cost of 163, 112. I would also like to add one section in there where we would not direct, we would ask all departments within the county to voluntarily examine their budgets fairly quickly and see if they could come up with some funds they could identify that they would be willing to put towards the reductions, using the example of the Health Department.
Is there support? All right, moved by Commissioner Fleet, seconded by Commissioner Henschel to move forward with a proposed recommendation, reductions in the 2011 budget, amending the union, non-union concessions to 8 to 5, and adding the issue of requesting all departments to voluntarily look at their budget for reduction of expenditures in a fairly short manner. Is there discussion? Commissioner Thomas?
Dean, how many years now has it been we've asked departments to find where they can cut? We do it every year.
Well, and I guess my concern with that is, we asked them to do that initially for the 2011 budget. That, the departments will cooperate and do what they can. I think, as I listen to this, the question I have is, at what point does the board tell us what services they're willing for us to, I mean, you're involved in this, and I don't mean to speak out of line, but what services can I go back upstairs and not provide at your direction?
Well, I'd like to answer that if I could.
Go to-
The motion reflects the direction from the board. We're asking, we're not directing the departments to make any cuts, but we're asking them to examine our budgets and, for example, if they all come back and say, we cannot reduce our budgets whatsoever, well, then the commission's going to have to take a hard look and decide what we're going to cut
Yeah.
in services.
Commissioner Wheelock and Commissioner Henschel.
I guess the one question I had, when you changed the non-union concession from $200,000 to $300,000, are you reducing the anticipated unexpected personnel line item by $100,000? Because we don't need $812,000. So if you're adding $100,000 there.
We do.
Well, I
Well,
know
you
we
might add
do
it to-
when we go into 2012 budget. I just don't think it's fair to try to make departmental program cuts on such short timeline. You know, I believe that we definitely will go to all of the departments and we will make significant cuts to those budgets, but it will be for the 2012 budget, not for the 2011 budget.
Commissioner Henschel.
Actually, Commissioner Fleece said what I was going to say, but I've got a question now.
Yeah.
When someone uses a personal day, is there any departments where they have to call in extra help, where we have overtime or extra hours because of that?
Someone?
Yes, there's the potential that could result in someone being called in primarily in the public safety functions, corrections. It's probably, well, I think it could impact almost every department.
So if by saying 300,000, we're actually being conservative and adjusting for the fact that if emergency service personnel is taking a personal day, they have to be covered, and that could cost us some overtime. So I think it's prudent.
That's true.
And I think I guess to get back to Commissioner Fleece's motion, is that, we're directing staff to attempt to negotiate with the union one more day from 6 to 5. And if they can only do 5, then we're right back to the 712. If they can do, if they get the 5, then you probably have up to $100,000 in contingency with stuff that you may not know may happen from now to the end of the year. So, I mean, that'd be one way of viewing it. Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, I have a problem with this, asking every department to be able to do that. I think we're shirking our responsibilities by not looking at programs and services that we should be providing. That's the area we ought to be looking at, not in an overall blanket reduction. We need to look at, and that was the
Yep.
budgeting for outcomes that we decided not to do. I think, we have to look at programs and services and then figure out what is it that we are going to provide for the residents of Grand Traverse County, but also what is it they want us to provide.
Hopefully, we'll get there for the 012 budget. Okay, any other comments on the motion? Commissioner Fleece.
With the use of personal days, generally a supervisor in a department, if the request is made, would pick a day where you have a full complement or full shift, and consequently, it doesn't involve overtime. Of course, there are situations where it will, but with good management, that can be worked around so it doesn't cost overtime. You certainly wouldn't, just for conversation, if you had a department of 5 and 4 of them on personal leave days, well, management's not going to allow that. I mean, it just isn't going to happen, so.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Maxbauer.
Well, actually, and I have a question for the board, and this kind of piggybacks onto what Commissioner Lemkool said. I agree with Commissioner Lemkool. I think we need to take a look at programs and give specific direction. And I don't think we're doing that in this motion. But my question to the board is, tomorrow night I have a Parks Board meeting. And originally, the first ad hoc committee meeting suggested the $35,000 cut to the Parks Board for Parks and Rec. So at that point, shortly after that meeting, I asked the Parks Director to please put on the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting, and I've left it there. I was going to pull it, and then I decided, well, I'll leave it there and we'll just have a discussion about it. A plan that would restrict the pool hours. It would preserve revenue. 80 to 85% of the users of the pool would still get to use the pool, and it would reduce expenses significantly. My initial estimate was if we implement it just for the summer season, we will save $45,000. And I did email Commissioner Henschel my spreadsheet. Only because I wanted him to check my formulas. He's a computer guy. I wanted to make sure they were right before I give them to the Parks Board tomorrow night. But is that something that, and I guess what I'm asking for from the board, is that something that you want me to go ahead and speak to the Parks Board about, or should I remove it from the agenda? And
If you're looking for a personal direction from me, is that you're the county commissioner representative on that board. And if you've identified some cost savings that will...
And the Parks Board certainly doesn't have to adopt those,
Right.
but it's an idea, and...
Right.
All right.
And you see very little impact to the public, I mean, I think you should feel free to do that. Commissioner Gilman and then Fleece.
I think it would be good to at least offer strong support from the board so that we're not seen as micromanaging, but at the same time applying some kind of pressure and understanding that we're going to be coming for it next year,
Right.
in all likelihood anyway. And again, whether it's May or June.
The impact in the summertime would be minimal, and that's why I am bringing it
Yeah, and perhaps
now.
we can address that as a separate motion after this motion. Would be a good suggestion. Any other, I'm sorry, did anybody else have anything? Please.
I just wanted to address Commissioner Lemkool and Max Bauer's comment on cutting programs. My motion is for the 2011 budget. Next year, we're going to have to do exactly what you're saying or suggesting. We're going to have to look at programs. We're going to have to determine what the citizens want us to keep, what they're willing to give up, and we'll make those decisions.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote on the motion? Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the only comment that I would make is it's been, 4 years ago, these county employees had 12 personal days between their sick days and their personal days. We reduced it to 8, and then we're proposing in this to reduce it to 6. Now, the motion is to reduce it to 5. Let us remember, just a few years ago, it was 12. And, somehow or another, I always have trouble when we try to cure budget woes on the backs of our employees. I just have a little problem with that. So that's just a thought. I haven't quite decided whether I support the motion yet or not with the change to the 300. But remember, first and foremost, that has to be negotiated with 13 separate bargaining units before it can be implemented. So if we don't get that negotiated until November, it didn't save you a dime. So the harder you make it for Jen and Dennis to go negotiate that, the longer it's going to take to get concession from your employees.
So, Commissioner Fleece, do you want to stand on your 8 to 5 motion?
I think so, because it's a temporary reduction because of the economic straits that we're in. I would think that probably in 3-4 years, or maybe less, we wouldn't even be looking at this, going down to 5.
All right. Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Dean?
I think it's very important that I make a few comments at this
Okay,
point,
go ahead.
and Jen will help me. We were directed to go back to the unions. There's the talk of 2 versus 3. We were asked to go back and ask them for 3 days. We have done that. A number of the unions have actually voted on this. Jen will give you an update as to who has weighed in at this point. So the discussion regarding 2 versus 3, just wanted to bring that to your
Okay,
attention.
well, that would be helpful. Go ahead. Jen?
The Teamsters General Unit and Teamsters Command have voted, and they both rejected the 3 personal days. The Teamsters District Court has voted and voted in favor of 3 personal days. All the other units, I've got 2 or 3 voting tomorrow. They're all staggered to report back to you at the board meeting on Wednesday. But we did ask for them to have the votes in and decided by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And it was 3 personal days.
Yeah, and there were other concessions on the other side of that.
Correct. There were other things involved with that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just thought that was important for,
All right.
to
Thank you.
know.
All right, any other questions on the motion? Everybody understand the motion? Does anybody need the motion repeated?
Why not? It's been a long time.
All right, the motion is to approve the proposed reductions to the 2011 budget. MERS 300,000, Health Department 28,888. Union, non-union concessions is going to be moved from 8 to 6 to 8 to 5. Projected savings 300,000. Economic Development Corp. will pay the additional 20, not coming from our budget, and anticipated and unexpected personnel costs savings would be 163, 112, which actually ends up being $812,000 in projected savings. Also, there was an addition that we were to ask all departments to voluntarily look at their budget and to seek a reduction in expenditures or other ways to save in their budget within a relatively short period of time for the 2011 budget and moving forward for 012. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Fleece,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
No.
Thomas,
Yes.
Richardson,
No,
no,
Richardson?
no,
No? Your vote no?
that's right.
thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Lemkool,
No.
Henschel,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Wheelock,
No.
Chairman Inman.
Yes. We have
5-4.
5-4.
I think we're gonna have a hard time on that 3 days.
Okay. Did you want further clarification, Commissioner Max Bauer, on your discussion with Parks and Rec?
No, I think I've got a general sense
Okay.
from the board.
Yeah, all right. And also...
Later, we're going to come and get it. Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted,
And I think that stands true with every commissioner that
I
serves.
think every department and every board wants to do their part with as little impact to the public as humanly possible.
Right, yeah. So, we would
And
extend...
that's the goal.
We would
Well, that's a good plan, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and we should extend that to, the commissioners that sit on other boards and commissions, that they also take a hard look at their budgets, as a part of their members of their boards as well. Okay, also, on the agenda item is the reminder of our fund balance policy. You have that in your packet, and it was just a reaffirmation that the board did take action, because there was a question on the ranges, and that range is 20 to 18%, based on expenditures. So that's just information only at this point. There is nothing else on the discussion item for the 2011 budget. We will open up public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes, Fred, want to introduce yourself?
Fred Kiesler, Health Officer. I do have a comment, is that Commissioner Henschel hit the nail on the head for us, and it doesn't have to be emergency staff necessarily. I want you to imagine we have a WIC clinics most every day, and we have 1 clerk and 3 techs, a nurse and a half, and we schedule in, we have 2,500 families, and they have to come in every other month, so it's a large number of people are coming in every day for getting recertification and getting their education and so forth. If that clerk is ill, those other 5 people are going to sit idle, or it's going to be, our productivity goes down. So we'll call in a clerk to cover on-call staff. So I don't think you realize the savings. I don't know, I could be so wrong, because I try to put myself in your boots as to what I do. I would consider having 2 holidays that people can use those sick days or the vacation days or even unpaid days. And I realize that's one less day people get services, but at least the productivity doesn't drop and we don't call in part-time people to cover that. Do you understand? I mean, because it's, if you take a staff of 50 people and you have 2 or 3 days, there's 220 work days about. 2 days, that means 100 days, or nearly half the time you're short a person for our size department. 3, then is 150 days that you're short a person each day. And it'd be better to, I think, clump it together rather than people who just get part of a service. So that's my 2 bits. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I'm sitting there thinking, I don't think this is, I think that Commissioner Henschel said it right, because you don't want to have the rest of the staff sitting idle.
Do I understand correctly, if we were to declare a county holiday, say we normally work Columbus Day and we say we're going to take Columbus Day off, the staff can then either use their personal day on that day or have a non-paid day? Is that what I'm understanding?
Or use a sick day.
Okay.
Or their personal day.
Personal day.
Or vacation day.
Thus, we would use up the personal days rather than cashing them out, and it would save the budget.
Right.
Is that right?
You do what you said. It just be everybody on the same days, so that you wouldn't have just part of a service. And I realize that doesn't apply to Central Dispatch or the Sheriff's Department, and certainly if we had an emergency, our department could get called in. But I'm just saying is that it might be more efficient, in other words. That's just my take.
I see why you're in charge over there. That's a great idea.
Okay. Any other public comment? Yes, Tino.
Good evening. Tino Bright up with the Traverse City Area Chamber of Commerce and the Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation, also a county resident at 9639 Kingfisher Trail in Long Lake Township. I just want to totally agree with the conversations that I heard this evening with regards to economic development. I agree on the sense with Commissioner Lemkool that we believe we should be getting more monies for doing what we do, but I also understand and agree that these are very tough times. Hard decisions need to be made. I certainly don't envy you in your commissioner role in the position that you have and the direction that you have to give, but I also agree with Commissioner Richardson's comments. If there was another way to keep our Economic Development Agency whole as a regional EDC, be it on a permanent or temporary basis, that's the right move to make. And I just appreciate the longstanding relationship that we've had longer than I've been here and been back here in this role. I know it's been a very good relationship, a very positive relationship over decades of time. Hopefully that will continue. The only thing that I would ask, and we'll certainly work with Commissioner Richardson and the EDC board on this front, is with regards to the revolving loan fund program itself and the issue of program administrative revenues. Just because the county revolving loan fund currently has a fund balance of roughly $900,000 doesn't mean we can just take $100,000 and put it into the administrative bucket. There's a formula that the state uses for admin usage. It's an 18% cap of program income. And program income is defined as principal and interest repayments back to the fund on deals that we've done, as well as interest earned on the fund balance. And today's interest isn't that high. So I'm of the opinion that the reason we have roughly $150,000 of program admin budget monies this year is because we've had several deals on the books making principal and interest repayments, and we've had a couple of payoffs within the last 12 months, one of them from the Minervini Group. That large payoff back to the EDC revolving loan fund, if you will, is counted as program income. So we've had some one-time big shots, I think, back to the program. And so what I would do would certainly be to work cooperatively with Ross and the EDC board to make sure that the MEDC, who oversees this program, would potentially allow us to carry forward any unused administrative dollars in the future if we do not use all 150,000 in 2011. So with that, I just
Tino,
appreciate the partnership.
Do the rules allow us to, from that $150,000, prepay for administrative services?
You have to, every year, so as I understand the rules of this program, what you have in program income in 2010 kind of sets, you then are able to use that 18% cap for your 2011 administrative budget. We, as a county, have to submit what is called a Project Income Program Review Form. It's a PI, in short, PIPR form, that has to go to the MEDC. We have to lay out the line item budgets that we are going to use for administrative dollars. So in part, it's the contract with the Traverse Bay EDC, it's marketing and website updates, it's legal fees, it's various things that make up the administrative budget for the revolving loan fund program and for the county EDC as a whole.
So some of those fees could be, like when you pay your attorney or retainer, you're paying in advance, or you pay for your website service for 5 years in advance.
As long as it
So-
fits within the guidelines
Okay.
of what's been submitted to MEDC at the state level, you're in, and it's an annual request that we always have to make.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Gilman, do you have a question?
Just, is there anything that shows, that quantifies directly I mean, I guess maybe this isn't the place for the discussion, but I mean, is there any place that shows or quantifies the value of the EDC, what it brings in for the amount that we expend, the $20,000 or $40,000? And if there is, does that use any kind of control group? In other words, someplace that does not, as a comparison? I mean, is there, or is it just, hey, we think we're doing good because we have businesses that are starting up?
Excuse me, typically, the measurements that we've used in the past have been, new businesses started, jobs created, jobs retained, new investment made by companies in the region. You can look back in time, I think, and say, okay, for example, let's take a company like Plascon Incorporated that's done 3 expansions in the last 6 years. To think about the types of assistance that we've provided to them, and to take a look at a company that started in the early 2000s as a shop of 4 people, and see what their tax base, what their taxes paid to the local unit of government, to the county, were back then, and how those taxes increased after their respective expansions. I mean, that doesn't happen, right away, but, a year or 2 years later, I think you can go back on the tax rolls and look to see how the taxes have increased.
The reason I ask is because, and Commissioner Inman, you worked in the banks, and typically, what was the cost percentage-wise that there would be for managing a trust? I mean, if you had a few $1 million being managed in a trust, what is the percentage that is as a cost of management?
In terms of a management fee?
Sure, yeah.
For a trust investment?
I mean, percentage-wise, is it 3 or 4%?
No, well, it's usually 30 basis points to 0.5% usually.
So for about 10 times the cost, we manage it through government, and then we have commissioners decide on whether or not to make loans. I guess what I'm saying is we could almost take the money, invest it in a trust that has some of the same kind of functions, but then we could almost be out of it. In other words, it would have some of the same functions. It could have a reduced requirement or threshold for getting the money. Then you'd have professionals looking at it. They'd manage the money for us at a bit less of a cost, I would think, and it'd be accomplishing the same thing.
Well, this is kind of designed as public comment, and do allow a few
Okay, I'm
exchanges. For a philosophical type discussion and change in structure and stuff, if you'd like to put that on an agenda for a future meeting, that would be fine.
All right.
Anybody, any other?
If I could just add the comment, I think
Sure.
that would be great for a study session or some future discussion at a board meeting, because I certainly have comments back, on that idea and whether or not we even have the ability to do that or not. Because at the end of the
Right,
day,
I'm
it's
sorry.
not
That wasn't
necessarily
fair.
the county money.
I apologize.
It's HUD money and state money, so.
Okay.
But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the longstanding partnership, and hopefully that will continue in the future. So thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. With no other business, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Or moved by Richardson,
Support.
second by Max Bauer. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. As a reminder, we got Ways and Means